I'd like to nominate my cousin Renee Douglas as a powerful woman and change maker. Renee Douglas died on the 31st of December 2017. She died very much in the same way that she lived, courageously and in love and care of others. First and foremost, Renee is a powerful and inspirational woman because she had 4 children and she raised them by herself. And not only did she have 4 children, but she had her mother, who she was the caregiver of. Her mother has a condition called bipolar, and Renee was the full-time carer of her mother and the full-time parent of her 4 children. As a black woman from a working-class background, I think we forget or don't represent these stories, but Renee's story is one of so many women, so many powerful and courageous and inspirational women's stories that we don't hear. Renee was very positive. She was more the cup half filled than half empty, right? She would smile through the most difficult circumstances. She would be practical. She would be responsive. Her children always had more than what they needed. Her neighborhood knew her very well. She was active in her community. She was in the streets, in the neighborhood. She knew who lived around her because she spoke to them and she got to know them and she cared for them too. On the 22nd of December 2017, Renee's door was knocked by the children across the street. She was at home with her baby daughter and her eldest daughter, and the children were frightened. They'd set a fire at home by accident, and there was no adult around at that time to help them. And Renee rushed. She passed her baby to her daughter, and she went into the home of these children to put out the fire. Renee had a very acute asthmatic condition, and the fire from the house in which she put out and saved the children caused her own death. Renee died in the same way that she lived. She died caring for people, looking after people, saving children, making sure life before hers. I want her to be remembered for that, for the powerful, courageous woman that changed the world, where children live because she does not. I'm so proud of you, Renee. I'm so proud of you, Renee. I'm so proud of you, Renee. I'm so proud of you, Renee.
Like her to be recognised.
I'm so proud of you.
I think it's really important for people like her to be recognised. I think it's really important for people like her to be recognised. I'd like to tell you about a woman called Hannah Pollard. She's a colleague of mine, and I think that she should be included in this piece of work because she's an artist and an educator, and she works at Plymouth Arts Centre running creative play sessions for children. And most importantly, and the way she has really inspired me, particularly, and I think everybody that she comes into contact with. Hannah, she has a beautiful little boy called Leo who is 3.5, almost 4, I think. When he was born very, very prematurely, I think at 23 weeks, and also had a twin brother who very sadly didn't survive more than a few days. Since then, I think this has probably been a hugely formative experience for Hannah, but what's so inspiring about her is that she is one of those people who doesn't shout her achievements from the rooftops, but she's the kind of person who lives her life quietly and with grace. Do you know the kind of people I mean? They just do what they do with such grace and generosity of spirit. She helps everybody she comes into contact with, completely selflessly, and she offers support and help and guidance to so many people, directly and indirectly, by just being the brave person that she is. And I think women like that often get overlooked because, like I say, they're not saying how great they are. They don't shout their talents from the rooftops. But those are the kinds of people who change lives really dramatically, but very quietly. So I think it's really important for people like her to be recognised. That's it.
I just think she should be recognised because she does so much for so many people, but she doesn't get much attention or appreciation back. I just think she should be recognised because she does so much for so many people, but she doesn't get much attention or appreciation back. I just think she should be recognised because she does so much for so many people, but she doesn't get much attention or appreciation back. I'm ringing up to nominate my mother, Christina Marie Bartlett. Well, it's always been my mum and I ever since I was born. Unfortunately, at the age of 27, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And getting older, I've witnessed her deteriorate in front of me. It's gotten worse, and she was having seizures and having problems at the hospitals, and nobody understood what was going on, and it was creating a negative impact on her, and she was just not herself. Once I had my little one, Bonavir, she decided to make a change to support myself and her grandchild, and was really brave enough to go through a deep brain stimulation where she had to have a microchip put in her brain to help produce more dopamine in order for her to move around. This was a huge sacrifice and a huge change because her words were, "I was ready to die." And to me, she is my hero, and it must be hard to realise that there could be a 50-50 chance that you could die just for your children and your grandchildren. That was over a year ago now, and she has done so well. She was having 8 tablets a day to now 1. She's moving around a lot more. She's going out. She's getting confident. And because of her experience, she's actually written a book about her experience with Parkinson's disease as a young adult, because younger and younger people are being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. I just think she should be recognised because she does so much for so many people, but she doesn't get much attention or appreciation back, and that's my story.
Well, I think her story's remarkable. Other people might not, but I do. She's special. Well, I think her story's remarkable. Other people might not, but I do. She's special. Well, I think her story's remarkable. Other people might not, but I do. She's special. Well, I think her story's remarkable. Other people might not, but I do. She's special. She was born in 1887, and she was born in Whitechapel, in the East End of London. But her family actually owned a number of shops, so she wasn't a poor East Ender as such at that time. Fairly well educated, and she had a very quaint way of speaking. She did sound like the Queen Mother. She had a distinct accent that we thought was a bit strange when I was a child, you know. Anyway, she was a dear lady, and she worked in one of the shops, and she was very interested in sewing and haberdashery and all the things that I've been interested in my life. But she went out with a party of friends when she was 16 or 17 in London, and to something that she thought was quite daring at that time, because I think she had a very sheltered home life. She went to Battersea Fun Fair, which sounds quite amusing today, and she fell in love with one of the chaps on one of the roundabouts. He was obviously very good looking and dashing. Anyway, they did eventually marry, and she had 5 children, and then he decided he would just disappear, which he did. She never saw him again. She brought up these 5 children beautifully herself to earn some money, because she was more or less destitute. She would cater for weddings in the East End when people were very, very poor, and did these things in their own home. And when they had their babies, she became a midwife and she helped them provide layout and what have you. And if anybody died, she would do the necessary to help them lay out the body and provide help for the family, food and what have you. And so she was there to do absolutely everything, and the children were involved. They had to wait at table at the weddings, they had to wash up, had to stay in the background, behave beautifully, and they grew up into very nice people, and then met their partners and had children. I was her first grandchild. When it came to the Second World War, her sons were away at war, and she would bake cakes and post cakes to them and look after their children. And she did the best she could for the war effort in a little tiny one up, one down house in the East End. Then she was bombed out in the Blitz. So everything had to go into a wheelbarrow and they had to leave London. They had nothing, no money, just a few odds and ends. And they went out into the suburbs and she was able to rent a house and then began looking after the children. Well, during the war, all her grandchildren that she had were evacuated down to Devon. She disapproved of that. She said, "You're not sending all those children off to strangers. You don't know what's going to happen." So she gave up. She had a little job then at a railway station, just making tea for the people coming in to London and leaving London rapidly. And she gave that up and she went down to Devon. She rented a house and she looked after 15 grandchildren. And she got them all out of wherever they were and she looked after them all, which was no mean feat really. She was getting on about that time. And then after the war, she came back and her family rented homes in North London. And she would spend a month with each because she didn't have a home. She had absolutely nothing. But she would always be somewhere making tea and helping somebody. Every month she moved on from one member of the family's home to another, and she used to come and stay at my home with, my father was her grandson. And well, I said earlier I was a grandchild, which I wasn't, I was a great-grandchild, I was the first one. And she had to share my bedroom, and I thought it was lovely. She was very small, and she was a little bit shorter than me, quite rotund. And she was just a lovely character, and it was lovely when we shared a bedroom. She used to tell me about her life. After a month, she'd pack up and she'd go on to somebody else. She was still around when I got married, and I had my children. I had to move to Bournemouth, and she came to live in Bournemouth with one of her retired sons. She was round the corner, and still doing all the same things. And then one night, the son and my uncle and aunt went off to the theatre at Bournemouth, and she stayed at home. She didn't feel like going out. Made herself some supper, and when they came back, she'd eaten something and she choked all alone and she died. So she had died before her time because she was quite well, despite being quite a great age by then. And so she's buried in Bournemouth, but she's still with me, she's still in my head. And I would love to have seen her with her great-great-grandchildren. And I tell my children, who now have their children, that what a special East End granny they had. Well, I think her story is remarkable. Other people might not, but I do. She was special. It was Margaret Turner, her married name. Mm-hmm. Yes.